8 years of playoffs for the Leafs. 9 playoff series. Everyone in the city basically knows that stat. It's not looking like 10. It sure isn't looking like 10 when you woke up this morning. When you're driving into work right now, or you've settled into your desk, or wherever you're listening to this podcast, you probably are not thinking that a team that, frankly, is 3-10 in elimination games is going to overcome a 3-1 deficit to a Boston Bruins group that has basically owned them now for a decade. The series isn't over, so these shows are always kind of weird to do because, yes, technically the Leafs could get back into this series and maybe William Nylander finds his footing. Maybe Austin Matthews gets healthy. Maybe those were the only reasons why it just wasn't clicking for the Toronto Maple Leafs through the first 4 games of this series. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what they were missing. Maybe the going on the road and alleviating some of the pressure is going to help these guys and make them feel a little bit better about themselves. Maybe. To me, the 3-1 deficit, especially with this group, when you do this show, is almost like when you've got a family member who is older that has kept coming in and out of the hospital. You start to do like the pre-grieving, right? You don't want to give up. You don't want to start just doing all of the memories of that person and thinking about them and speak about them as though they're passed away. But it's hard not to let your mind go there. And so you do. You start to pre-grieve. And then by the end of it, you kind of feel like you've almost worn yourself out a little bit more because, damn, you spent a lot of time and energy already doing that thing. And I think that's kind of where we are with the Leafs right now. Like, who in their right mind is really being optimistic right now? Who in their right mind is really believing in this group? And I think that you could if you'd seen it before, right? If you'd seen some type of response to adversity. But again, 3-10 in elimination games. You just watch their stars bicker at each other on the bench. And you now are at a point where I don't think that people really want to hear the excuses. Like, Matthews isn't healthy. That is very true. I don't doubt the severity of his illness, that this guy is not feeling anywhere close to what he would like to. I don't doubt that William Nylander was hurt coming into this series and that he had to miss these games and how impactful he may have been in this series had he actually been healthy. Respect to the Boston Bruins, who once again were, I think, disrespected and discounted by many of us because of on-paper talent, which is something that a lot of us end up getting trapped in when we try to evaluate these matchups, and we forget that in the sport of hockey, there's a couple things that really, really matter. And one of those things is identity. Another one of those things is culture. And this is what I keep coming back to over the course of this weekend in thinking about the Toronto Maple Leafs. What exactly is the identity and what exactly is the culture? Like, if you're trying to picture how they get back into this series, right? Where does it begin for you? What is it in your mind's eye that you see when you envision a Toronto Maple Leafs comeback? It probably starts with a lot of Austin Matthews goals, right? That's something that we've grown accustomed to here. And I think I've said it a lot, that it really does feel like the team starts to fall into place when Matthews is scoring a ton of goals and he's really feeling himself. But he's not right. He's had 4 shots in his last 2 games. 4. Remember when he was chasing 69 goals? What it looked like? How many shots he was putting up each game? How many shot attempts? How forceful he was playing? It was great when we saw the proof of concept when we watched it in game 2, and he carried the Maple Leafs to a win. But again, it was yet another game where the offense wasn't dominant. They didn't kick the Bruins' teeth in. They finished with a couple of goals. And that's actually been the theme for them, is that a team that is built, that is predicated upon offensive firepower and having superstars up front, has now gone 11 games where they've scored 3 goals once. The rest of them under that number. Bunch of twos, a bunch of ones. How often do you watch the Leafs and feel like, boy, they've really imposed themselves in this hockey game? They've had good stretches, and then that seems to be enough for them. And that's where I get into the culture stuff. I don't believe that there has been enough organizational accountability with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that has now materialized into what you're seeing in front of you. Those players sniping at each other on the bench, Mitch Marner throwing his gloves down in, I don't know, anger, the frustration boiling over publicly for a group of guys that is absolutely aware of what that's going to get turned into. And then they're trying to spin it in post games like, oh, we don't hate each other. No one said you did. No one said you hated each other. Actually, that was a very strong response. But yeah, when the Leafs kept running this back, it was always very simple to say, well, you want to bet on talent. You want to bet on talent because, yeah, of course you want to bet on talent. Who wants to say out loud, oh, what I think the team needs is a bunch of lesser players? You sound like an idiot. And you're portrayed as an idiot for saying so. But there's been a couple things here that have been pretty consistent. One, questioning whether or not the organizational trauma, the consistent losing would play out this way, where when these guys get into these tough moments, they're not able to overcome it. Because again, it's a tough moment, right? You're facing a strong team, a well-coached team, a gritty team, a tough team, a team with a really good goaltender. You don't have your stars at 100%, but you don't feel like you persevere through any of this. You don't feel like there's a second motor. So what? The formula is that everything needs to break your way perfectly in order for you to win? Like, look at what just happened to the Vancouver Canucks. They're down to their third-string goaltender, and they just came back in a hockey game and won. They found a way. Like, look across the NHL right now. Other teams are finding ways to score more than 2 goals. Look at the Colorado Avalanche. That's a team that is built similarly to the Leafs, where they've got a couple of guys up front, superstar players, and then the rest they have to try to fill out the roster with lesser paid guys. Do you feel like any Leaf has ever imposed their will in a series the way that Cale Makar did yesterday? Like, the Leafs version of Cale Makar technically is supposed to be Morgan Rielly. He has 1 assist in the series so far. John Tavares has no points, 5-on-5. Austin Matthews, like I said, just came off of 2 games where he had 4 shots, not healthy or whatever. Marner has a goal and an assist in this series. And yeah, the goal was beautiful, but it was when they were already down and hadn't played for 2 periods. And William Nylander, like, he has the excuse of not playing, but it's also proof of concept that when you build your team out this way and you're missing $7 million in what is about to be $11 million off your cap, that it's going to be really hard for you to find a way to piece it together. And so, to me, an injury is not really an excuse. It's a reminder that, God, you really need all of your guys to be healthy at the right time. And so, right now, I think a lot of people are looking at this with real apathy and saying, okay, the excuses are done. You can't keep running this thing back. And sure, get back in it and prove everybody wrong. But at this moment in time, I don't know what you're supposed to believe in terms of an identity, a culture, or a reason to believe that this formula is all of a sudden going to start to have an impact that, frankly, we have yet to see. Kris Versteeg is 2-time Stanley Cup champion. He is the inventor of the Clever app. He is my friend and yours. He's joining the show right now. What's up, man? How we doing?
Was that your best one yet?
What? Oh, you're going to compliment that?
Was that your best one yet?
What?
Mike Futo would be proud.
Yeah, I know. Mike, you know what, though? Mike and I go way back. So, he's proud of me for different reasons. But, okay, I want to start with this. Is, like, if I had to ask you, what is the Leafs' identity? What is your answer to that?
Well, where to even go? I don't know what their identity is.
Right.
When we talked, like, is it that team that can come back at hard times? Is it held? Even talking about a team with identity, when you're talking about guys screaming at each other on the bench, which I love. Mm-hmm. I love. Can they, teams with an identity can fight through that. So what is their identity? I don't know what it is, because at the start of the series, I said Boston is a well-coached team with lesser pieces on paper. Mm-hmm. When you have a very strong coach team with a culture and players who are bought in, it creates an identity. And that was the number one reason I was worried about this series going to Boston, was purely on the fact of coaching and the culture that they create with the players that come in and slot in. So As for what it is, I have no idea. Obviously, when you're looking at the team on paper, it should be to score goals.
Mm-hmm.
You have depth guys, too. Matt Nyes, like I just looked at the shots just before I came on. He had no shots. He had 14 minutes of play. It's like other guys have to feel important and find ways to do, but that's, again, up to a coaching staff to make all their players feel important and feel a part of that identity to pull their weight. Look at the Bruins. James Van Riemsdyk comes into the game, scores a goal. There's an identity. There's a culture built. It's next man up. Doesn't matter who's in your lineup. They lose one guy, the next guy comes in, they fill it out, they feel important in that piece and that role, and it works out. So if you're just relying on the horses, and that's what you're going to live and die from, and they're going to always get everything they want and need, there's no culture set, and then the identity is lost. So what is the identity? I have no idea.
Yeah, well, this is the thing I keep thinking of is it's anything in life, right? Is when you're struggling in work, you always have to ground yourself kind of in, okay, well, what is it that I do well? What is it that I bring to the table? Like, what is it that I do better than anybody else, or at least that I take pride in? And for the Leafs, it's just when it comes to the playoffs.
You just hit it. Sorry. Cutting you off. Taking pride in a role.
Yeah.
Feel important in a role. Even if it is just simply you are there to kill the clock. You need to feel important in every second, like Revo on the ice turning the puck over in his own zone in the first period. I'm not saying he doesn't feel important in his role, but he needs to understand every time he's on the ice, it is so important to win that board battle. It is so important to get the puck out of the zone. You are not there to make little bump plays to the middle in the first period. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's an issue and Revo's fault at all. But the pride in a role, the next man up, is the most important thing in a well-oiled machine hockey club. And I've never felt most guys are feeling important in their roles. And you can see it if you bleed throughout their lineup. David Kampf, 14 minutes, 0 shots. That's a guy eating up a lot of minutes. Between two guys, 28 minutes, 0 shots. If you keep going throughout the lineup, it's like if you stack minutes on top of minutes, those guys have 0 shots. I'm not saying that that's why they're losing. It is part of the reason. But then you look at the Stars, especially Marner, and he plays 23 minutes the other game. 0 shots. There's just no identity to each guy, given each role and the importance within each role. Can they come back and win the series? Yes. Can they win a Stanley Cup? This team? Absolutely not. So I know we're probably going to be hard on them on this call today while I'm at the worst place ever, Pearson Airport. But
That is the worst place.
And they can come back and win, but the coaching and culture and that to win 4 rounds against teams better than the Bruins, because I'm telling you, the Bruins aren't going to win a Stanley Cup either. I don't think. If they do, I don't know. I'll be super shocked. But it takes a team that is built on structure, culture, and everything that it takes to make every single player feel important.
So you mentioned the chirps on the bench and the guys yelling at each other. You like that version of it? Because we know what one guy said, which is, it's not junior hockey, Mitch. Stop crying. We see Marner throw his gloves down. You don't mind any of that. You think that's just, that's normal. That's overstated by us who are watching it.
Well, when I was younger, my old man would say frustration is a useless emotion, but sometimes it's understandable. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're in a big moment, you're frustrated, you're angry, and you got to let it out. And sometimes you got to let it out on your teammates. So I have no problem with them going back and forth. I remember, going back and forth with Kane telling me I'm horse poo, or, this guy telling me I'm crap, or wake up, and, you start swearing back at him, and maybe a guy chops a stick on the bench because he's ticked off. So I have no problem with guys holding each other accountable, especially the Stars, giving it to each other. I've seen Duncan Keith scream at Jonathan Toews in the face. They go out, they're men. They go out and play the next shift like it's their last. So I don't have a problem with that. I wish there was more of that. I wish they would do it to each other more. I wish they would, not saying that they have to do it with frustration like the way it was on the bench. I still like it, but hold each other accountable. That's what it's part of being a team. if you're crap, let your buddy know. You should still be able to go out and have a beer with the guy after work, after the game. That's part of it. But if you have a culture or a team that is not built and has a strong foundation, those type of frustrations that you see on the bench will eat away at a team rather than build a team, if that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. And the only thing, again, I keep coming back to is like, yeah, they're a culture of accountability in general. I don't know. It's always felt like more of an excuse culture. Like, oh, well, we got goalied. Oh, well, we had our opportunities. They didn't go in the net. Oh, the media misunderstands us and they're really cruel
What did I tell you? Yeah. What have I told you for 5 years? That every year we do a call about this during the playoffs is, Quenneville or coaches I've coached, the Sutters or any of these guys of the past are like, if you screw up, own it. Mm-hmm. Just own it. Move on. People will respect it more than, like you said, creating excuses or, oh, this goalie was better or that. No, if you lose, they're the better team. I turn the puck over, got to be better, move on. Mm-hmm. That's part of it, right? That's part of what the best teams do. Watch the Vegas Golden Knights. Watch those top guys if they have a terrible game. They'll come out and say, I'm terrible today, need to be better. Mm-hmm. There's no wishy-washy excuses made up time and time again, but the precedent is set from the top.
Yep.
The top needs to set that, and it needs to bleed throughout the team, and that's always been the issue. And that's why, we could always look at the series. Yeah, they could come back and win it. But to win 4 rounds against better teams, I just cannot see it because, first off, the identity, like you talk about, the culture, and the importance within the roles. But I don't know. It is very concerning to see time and time again.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. And that's it. It's like, okay, sure, you weren't healthy. You're not the first team to not be healthy in the Stanley Cup playoffs. It's pretty notorious.
I saw Duncan Keith get wheeled into a game.
Yeah.
He was so sick. Game 1, Vancouver. He was so sick. Couldn't even move. Wheeled in. Thrown on the ice. I've seen guys with broken legs, Nicholas Hjalmarsson, broken hands, pulled groins, whatever it was. Like, I've seen it all. So, yeah, excuses are that if, like, guys are sick or hurt or whatever it may be. But this time of year, those are things you got to put out of your mind, and you got to be willing to do whatever it takes to win.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about it. It's like, okay, so, yeah, you weren't 100% healthy. Oh, yeah, okay, you got a more difficult matchup. Again, you know who else has had difficult matchups? Every single team that's won a Stanley Cup. Like, that's the way this thing works. And so, to me, it's like if you were one off, this is year 2, maybe this is year 3, you go, okay, fine, put these excuses now. But I think most people at this point are looking at it and going, yeah, nobody cares. I'm sorry that you missed William Nylander for 3 games in this series. I'm sorry Matthews wasn't perfectly healthy at the right time. It's not going to cut it this time around. I do want to talk about Keith, though, because this is a guy that, you have been, particularly forthright when it comes to his ability. What is the more damning stat under Keith, 4-12 at home, or this year, again, 1-14 on the power play?
They're both concerning, equally concerning to me. And, look at the power play. It's just stagnant. They don't keep guys accountable to their minutes on the power play. Guys just go out there and go through the motions for 2 minutes, and then your secondary guys don't get any real chances or real looks or puck touches to get into games. So now you're keeping your secondary guys off. Look at the Boston Bruins. Split their units. Now they create inter-competition in the team. This is how we used to think too. If Kane's unit would be on the ice, then I'd be on Host's unit. And I'd be like, okay, I couldn't wait for them to get off the ice almost so I could go try to score. There's an inner competition that is not built within that team. And then also the secondary guys don't get their puck touches to get in the game, and they don't change things up. So that's part of their record issue is their power play. You watch, Charlie McAvoy run a power play up top, and the deception and the angles and everything he's doing. And then you watch their second unit go at it with Lindholm and all these guys. But you watch the Leafs, it's just one unit. Mm-hmm. Nothing changes, maybe one guy here or there. But they're they don't create an inner competition on the power play. That's part of the coaching. Oh, I'm just going to live and die with these 5 guys. I'm not going to hold anyone accountable. I don't really need to get my bottom guys in the game. So if your power play is 1-14 and that's what you're basically living on time and time again to win a playoff series, you're going to be out. You need to score 5-on-5. You need to score on the power play. You need to create intercompetition. And that power play is part of the reason why their home record is what it is. And I'm not going to blame the fans, but the fans are painful in Toronto, right? Like at those games, I know you're talking about it the other day. That's not why they lose at all. But, they definitely aren't given much to cheer for. But that is part of the problem, too.
Yeah, just look at it now, though. And I didn't like it, especially game 1 at home, so game 3, because it just felt real lifeless. But there was a buzz in that building to start game 4. I thought that the Cole tribute had a real effect, a real impact on the crowd.
Unbelievable.
It was. And so was I think, last 48 hours of crowd talk. And I think that a lot of people can't really understand the difference of not blaming the crowd, but then just mentioning it, because it is like different from other places. But yeah, I thought that the players absolutely killed it, and they came out and they were flat for 2 periods. And then Keefe comes out after the game and says, you can't question the effort. And I want to ask you as a player, is like, can you question that effort?
Well, if you lay an egg in game 4 of the Stanley Cup finals on Saturday night, you bet your effort's going to be questioned, or your lack of detail, or your lack of focus. And that's what they had. They had lack of detail coming out of the gate, lack of focus on the turnover by Reeves. They weren't ready, so that's part of effort. I look at effort in multiple ways, not just skating as hard as you can all over the ice. Guys are doing that. Guys are working. Focus and detail is part of effort, and they lack focus. They lack detail. Watch Edmondson skating over the puck as well on that play. Just a lot of things that bother me. So how are they prepared for the game? What are they learning? What are they doing? Are they even taking in the coach's message anymore? Because generally when there's lack of focus and lack of detail, that's part of the issue, is are they taking in the message at all? So that's what I see.
Yeah. And by the way, to the power play point, when you're talking about breaking it up, I've seen a lot of, well, what's Keefe going to do? Is he going to put a whole new unit together right as the playoffs start? It's like, yeah, that's what Boston did, and it worked. Also, we had proof of concept of this. In February, when the power play was at its very best, the entire year, it went 14 of 28, okay? What was the main thing that ended up happening at this time? Tavares was pulled off a power play 1 for Bertuzzi. Morgan Riley was cycled out on the blue line at times for Timothy Liljegren. Like, they gave the power play a different look personnel-wise. And that's one thing where, people have always said the thing of, the inmates run the asylum, the inmates run the asylum, the inmates run the asylum. And I look at it and go, okay, well, maybe that's true, because if none of these guys are willing to sacrifice any power play time or to be willing to break up this unit, or their coach looks at it as it's in the midst of 1-14 and you're staring across the aisle and they're killing you after just splitting it up and doing a different look, I just have to think that, that ties into what we're talking about with that culture, with that identity, that those guys are like, man, we need our points right here. We're gunning for these things right now, because we're pressing. We're pressing for this because we didn't get it in other areas.
Well, and sometimes as a power play unit, as a guy who's played power play, it is good to play with other guys, to keep you fresh, like you said, to give you different looks, and to keep you honest for the minute you are on the ice. Power play, everyone thinks a power play is just enter the zone. Yeah, you have to work harder on the power play. You have to work harder. The penalty kill ramps up their desperation. You as a power play unit have to as well. So if you just got guys going through the motions, knowing that nothing's ever going to change, they're going to go take their minute and a half and basically kill the clock on the power play, and then you're not going to get your secondary guys in, that's a coaching problem. It's a straight up coaching problem. And you're not willing to try or give other guys the opportunity to change something different. But I bet you we see it tonight, because it's Last Chance Avenue now, tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's Last Chance Avenue now for the team. So, but should it be that when you're at the wit's end? Why couldn't you try this at the beginning, or maybe after game 1, or maybe after game 2? It's always like last ditch efforts in order to make changes, rather than making them on the fly. Hey, I didn't like what I saw in game 1. Boom, new guy. Even if we won the game, you can still make detail changes. So, when there's no accountability to guys, they go through the motions. They don't have any desperation. The penalty kill outworks the power play, and you have guys that again and your secondary option that aren't getting puck touches. It's just there's really nothing to it, or there's no science to it.
Yeah, I just keep thinking too with like the accountability culture stuff. Like the second Dubas is fired, the first report is Brendan Shanahan has called the core four and let them know no one's going anywhere. Like that's the first thing that happens. Hey, don't you guys worry. It's not your fault. Like,
should have only called Matthews, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, just call Matthews.
Just call 34 and make sure that he's on board, and that I think that's got to be one of the differences that ends up happening this time is I believe even the stuff where they go, oh, they re-upped Sheldon Keefe. Like he's about to walk into an extension that he's not going to coach a game on. Like he's going to have an extension that he signs where he will not be the coach for the entirety of it, because unless you believe that they're coming back in this series, which again, they're 3-10 in elimination games. I don't know if they're going to be miraculously fully healthy, and I don't think that the Boston Bruins are going to blow a 3-1 lead 2 seasons in a row. Certainly not to this team the way that they're playing right now. But yeah, I wonder for him in seeing all this, how much his mindset maybe has shifted from, oh, okay, I want all my guys around here and I like Mitch on my line, to being able to play with Domi, having some success on his own, and then now starting to feel those frustrations as a player. Like, yeah, you know what? I've gotten the 69 goals. I've won the Rocket a couple of times. I've won a Hart. I'd like to win now. And whatever that's going to take, it's maybe got to be a new look. The question is whether I think he'll probably be the captain next year, or at least I hope he's the captain next year. But I think one of the more important pivots is not just like firing and pound of flesh for fans. It's going to be what's the mindset of Austin Matthews coming out of this series.
It's got to be pure frustration. Think, like, how old is he? Is he 27?
No, I think he's 26, but
26. You know, he's in a very important time of his career, in the sense of he's going to be playing his best, or he's, starting to play his best hockey for about 3 years now. How much longer can that be sustainable?
Yeah.
How much longer? How many more kicks at the can as a team? I know Ovechkin got it on year 13, but how many more kicks at the can do you get when the league is this competitive and this intense? So that's always got to be going through the mind, I'm sure, of an Austin Matthews, just seeing, I want to win a Stanley Cup. Do we have the team to do it? Do we have the pieces? Are we willing to make changes to get the pieces in here in order to do it, or the coaching change, or whatever it may be? I couldn't imagine the frustration that he feels as a player, and where he is currently at in his career, maybe age-wise. I'm not saying he can't play into his mid-30s and try to win on other teams and stuff like that, but if you want to win in Toronto in your prime, and that is what drives you, which I believe it does drive Austin. He's a highly driven player. That has got to be on your mind. I don't know how many more years I can do it at this level. I need guys around me to win now. We need to get guys in here to win now. We need to get coaches in here to win now. So I would assume that goes through his mind. It's going through mine, just thinking about obviously where he's at in his career and the level of play he's playing with.
Yeah. Well, next year he enters the new contract, and yeah, it's going to be 4 more years, I think, guaranteed of Austin Matthews. But yeah, beyond that, I don't think if you don't win in that period, I think it's going to be over. And so for him, I think that they've got to pivot this offseason, and I'm saving more of this stuff for later, but I do think that, like, once they're actually out of this series, because I won't write the obit just quite yet, but yeah, I think that one of the main pivots is going to have to be that this goes from being the quote unquote core 4 to the Matthews team, and that that it's finally just like fully on him. That, hey, it's your team. We're building this around you. We're not building this around 4 guys. Last thing from me. Do you think that the constant failures of the group, the fact that they haven't been able to do it time and time again, how much do you think that's playing into their psyche heading into these next couple of games, if there are a couple of games, this next game?
Well, I would assume that it's in their psyche even before the playoffs starts. Like, we have to get this done. I'll take you back to 2000. Yeah, it was 2010 when we knew that it was going to be our last kick at the can as a team due to cap structure. So that piece of us going into that playoffs, we were like, we have to win now. There was a desperation inside the locker room and the players and talking to each other. I would assume that there's some sort of conversation with these players judging if they're that close of friends, like, hey guys, this might be our last kick at the can. We have to win now. We have to be desperate, or this is not going to be like this any longer. Like you said, you got a new president of MLSE. You got possibly more changes coming at the end of the season if they lose. So these guys, I would assume, think about it. I would hope they talk about it. And with the desperation level played thus far, not including Matthews, it's just not showing.
Hey, Matty, I know you got to go catch a flight. Thanks so much for making time today.
Yep. Thanks for having me. You take care.
See you, pal. Kris Versteeg, 2-time Stanley Cup champion, creator of the Clever app, which, again, really useful for all coaches at any single level. But, yeah, you can download it for free in the App Store. It's a highly, highly reviewed app, highly, highly useful tool for coaches.